This is Jillian Coleman with the Homegrown Wealth Show. Today, we're breaking down everything you need to know as a first-time home buyer on how to be prepared when it comes to credit score, lending, and house hunting for your first home. All right, so let's talk about the reality of your credit score. What are lenders looking for? What do they want your credit score to look like? So this is very vital. I tell everyone to be on the safe side. A 640 or higher is really more of a guaranteed bet when it comes to getting approved for financing. Now, that's not to say that certain lenders aren't able to go down to at least a 580. Just understand that with lower scores, there's typically more down payment and there's also more paperwork that will be involved. So, how do you know what your credit score is? Credit Karma? No. Do not, I repeat, do not use Credit Karma. Now, what I will say, if you have a banking app such as like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, one of the bigger banks that are tied to say like Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, those are your 3 credit bureaus, that would be a perfect way to gauge where your score could be. Now, this is what I will say. That is an estimate when you go onto those certain sites. It's not always your true score because typically you have to pull for your true score to know what that really looks like. I tell everyone my FICO. My FICO is the perfect little app. You can go in. It's going to have your credit history. It's going to have what's currently on there. It's going to have also too how lenders pull up for the FICO, which ones that they actually use. So you'll know somewhat of an idea what your true score is. Now, this is going to be a big one. A big portion of your credit score is just paying your bills on time. So if you sit down and you look over your monthly budget, are you paying your bills on time every month? That means no late payments, no 30-day late payments anywhere on your credit report. Now, sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes things happen. If you have one late payment, it may be excusable. But after 2, you probably will have to wait till the following year before you can qualify for financing. So that's the biggest portion when it makes up your credit score is paying your bills on time. Everything else is like credit utilization, just making sure you're not maxing out your credit cards. So stay at 30% or below. That helps out a whole lot. And also just having some great credit history. So if you have a card that's kind of been lingering around in your wallet, use it every now and then. Don't just go and shut it down because that shows that you have a relationship and that you're keeping a good relationship by paying monthly and paying on time. So those are really the bigger things that I'm going to tell you when it comes to your credit score. Now, a lot of people say, well, I want to purchase a home. How much do I need to have? I get asked this daily. And it's really kind of hard to give you a true estimate of what you need to have saved. And the reason being is because I don't know where you're going to get pre-approved. So, and I don't know what type of loan you're going to qualify for. Do you qualify for a loan with no down payment? Do you qualify for a loan with 3% down, 3.5? Do you have to put down 5? Would you need to put down 10? You know, you could always go all the way up to 20, but you need to have some savings in the bank. And I will always say the best way to start is whatever you're comfortable with paying monthly, at least have 2 of those payments put back into your savings account, if not more. And that way, that's a guaranteed bet because when it comes to purchasing a home, there are some upfront costs that you pay before you actually get to the closing table. I'll discuss that later. So we've covered the credit score. Now, with that being said, what's more, not more, but what's just as important as credit score is also your debt to income ratio. Debt to income ratio is pretty much, quick definition, what you bring in monthly versus what is showing as payments reflecting on your credit report. If you have any child support, any IRS payments that you're making, if you have any alimony, those are things that are going to count against your income. So what does that mean? We don't want to see extremely high car payments and it's eating up at least 50% of your mortgage. I mean, not your mortgage, but your income. That's not going to work out. So we want to make sure that you're keeping your debt to income ratio low. And I tell people, you know, you really want to keep your credit cards with a very little balance. You really don't want to carry high balances month to month unless you're paying them off every month. Like I said, you know, any higher payments. You don't want any additional loan payments that don't need to be there. Lenders don't like to see that you're constantly looking to borrow money, because the need to always borrow indicates that you may have a money management issue. So now let's talk about, you've done the application, you've gotten pre-approved. I have a lot of people say, hey Jill, I don't have a lot of funds. How does that work out? Well, we have down payment assistance programs now, and those programs can go up between $10,000 to $12,000 to help you with either the down payment or closing costs or both. So you may qualify for a program such as the down payment assistance to help you get into a home. You also have the USDA home loan, where there is 0% down payment. Now, there are certain qualifications with that loan, such as you have to be within a certain area, and there are income restrictions on that as well too. So you have options to help you get started. And I think that's the most important thing for first-time home buyers is remember, you're getting started. This is not forever. This is not, the dream home. This is the home that helps you build a relationship with owning. This is the one that teaches you a little bit about maintenance, a little bit about possibly home projects that you would like to do. How far do your skills go? So those are very key to understanding when it comes to your first home. Pre-approvals are very essential because a lot of times when you go on Zillow, you go on realtor.com or any other home site, and you get looking at homes and it says your estimated monthly payment is $1,350, and it's a $350,000 house. That's great. That's also very incorrect, because if you go and you find the mortgage calculator, what they don't tell you is that they calculated you put down 20%. So I always tell my clients, you have to redo those numbers. And that's why it's very important to have a pre-approval. Know your numbers. That is the key to this game. Knowing your numbers is going to save you a lot of time. It's going to help you make an educated home search. It's going to make for a smoother process. So let's say you finish the application. You're having a conversation with your lender. Hey, so I'm glad to report that you've been pre-approved for a home loan. I have you pre-approved at $300,000. Sounds great. That's wonderful. How much is that payment? Okay, so taking a look at today's current interest rate and all the other fees associated with closing, you're looking to have about a $2,500 monthly payment. $2,500? I wasn't expecting that. That's too high. So that's where you have to say, I was more comfortable making a payment of around $1,800. So the lender's going to say, hey, look, that's great. I'm glad you told me that. So we can restructure the numbers to keep you to where you're comfortable. So if you know you want to pay no more than $1,800 a month, and remember, payments always include property taxes along with homeowners insurance if you're financing. They're going to say you need to stay around the $250,000 mark when it comes to looking for a house. So that way, when you go into your search engine, or if you have the app with the agent logo, which I always tell my clients, you can say, I want to stop my search at $250. So you never see above that. I've had so many people who have done this backwards. They fall in love with a home that they don't want to make the payment on. You don't want to be that person, because the reason being, you compare every home in your price range to the one that you absolutely fell in love with, but you may not qualify for. So know your numbers up front, search the proper way. That way, you're not having hurt or let down feelings. What is the starter home? This is a great question. This is an open-ended question. This is not a one-size-fits-all question. When you think of a starter home, I've had people whose starter home was a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath home on a half-acre lot. I've also had some people start a home be a 3-1 on maybe 0.3 of an acre. It was just enough. That is going to be determined by your income and money saved to be applied to closing on how much you qualify for and what your starter home will look like. Now, this is what I tell people. Keep it down to your needs. How many people are living with you? How many bedrooms do you need? How many bathrooms would you need to make the house functional for you and whoever's living with you? It's nice to say, hey, I would love a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house. In reality, it's you, maybe another person, a child. Do you really need 4 bedrooms? Some people say, hey, I have out of town guests. How often are they visiting? So you have to keep things in mind. You have to keep it very realistic, because that's my main point when I sit down with my buyers in my buyer consultation. Let's really think through what you're wanting in a home to make sure that it fits the price range that you qualify for. Today's market has changed tremendously, and what you used to could get is now maybe you have to make some sacrifices based off which price point you're in. So keeping it there with being realistic about your pre-approval amount and your needs is always helpful. And what I tell everyone when it comes to your wants, things can be added over time. You can always add a deck. You can always repaint cabinets. You can always redo your kitchen. You can always upgrade your bathroom. Those are things that can always take place down the road. Does the house function? Is the house moving ready? Does it allow you a safe environment to live? Is the main thing when it comes to looking for a home. All right, so making a competitive offer. And I'm going to actually take this in a different direction when it comes to making a competitive offer, because I feel like it's not the buyer's responsibility to know what the current market conditions are. That is your agent's responsibility. How knowledgeable is the agent that you hire that they're not going to have you make a ridiculous offer that's going to slide across to that seller? And as the listing agent is breaking it down to the seller, it makes absolutely no sense and they just say no. So, what I will say is to definitely scout your agents. Social media is a thing now. What are people saying? What are the reviews? Ask around, who did so and so use? You can never not do enough. I have the opportunity to work as both a listing agent, to where I help sellers put their house on the market and get it sold, and to work as a buyer agent where I'm working with buyers who I take them into homes and help them write competitive offers. And I always go based off what works best for you. If we're financing, I'm going to call the lender. Hey, what's the way I can make this the strongest? If there's closing costs needed, how much can we ask for? Then I sit down with my buyers and I strategize on what I think would be best, especially if there's another offer on the table. So that's my biggest takeaway on competitive offers. It's really, you have to know how knowledgeable your agent is. And I'm going to tell you this, and I'm not, here to say this, but being a listing agent, I have seen some stuff, or not stuff, but I have seen some offers come across. I can tell that the lack of knowledge is definitely there. And I probably know 9 times out of 10 what I'm about to walk into. So that's very key. The second thing is, once the offer is accepted, then that's when you start to go into the process of inspections and you go into the process of appraisals and all that great stuff. So when I say that you have a knowledgeable agent, also have an agent that's have vendors ready and available. Now, some buyers say, hey, I know people that can do this. Or they say, hey, I got a recommendation from so and so. But if my people say, hey, I don't know, I can provide them a list of inspectors, and not just a home inspector. If the home has a pool, well, let's do a pool inspection. Let's make sure that the pool is functioning. Let's make sure it's in great condition. Let's make sure that the pump is working properly. If you want an air quality test and make sure that there's no mold in a home, we can schedule that. If the property has a well and a septic, it is so important, and I see people skip out on this. Test the water on a well. You would be shocked. You would be very, very shocked. Also, do not forego a septic inspection. It is very easy to say, hey, well, the toilet's flush. Well, the toilet's flushed well when it was one person living in that house. Now you're moving in with 3 other people. So now it's 4 toilets that are going to be flushing. What do you think could possibly happen if you didn't get that septic inspection? So no upfront, and that's what I mean by there are costs for upfront purchases when you get ready to buy a home. So things that are happen, your earnest money, that's good faith money. That's money that you're going to put down when you get ready to purchase a home. And that percentage varies. So it could be anywhere from 1,000 and up. Also, you have your home inspection costs. That usually goes by the square footage of a home. Any other inspection is solely at the buyer's expense. sellers are not responsible for inspections. Now, if you have a seller that looks up and happens to pay for your inspections, that's awesome. 9 times out of 10, no, that's not going to happen. You are responsible for your own inspection. And then you always have what we in the real estate world know as a CO 100. And what the CO 100 is, it's just a termite inspection, but it's also a moisture inspection as well to make sure there's not excessive moisture under the home. There are no active termites or any active fungi that could be potential or deadly or hazardous to the potential new buyer. So you want to make sure that you have an agent to where if you don't know these things, they know reputable vendors in the area that are able to help you make sure this home is ready for when you're able to sign at the closing table. So let's take a step back and look at how home ownership has evolved over time. So the FHA creation. In 1934, the Federal Housing Administration introduced longer terms, 20 to 30 years. That's major. And lower down payments to help more people be able to have access to home ownership. Now, this is what I do want to tie in. Even though the FHA loan has been around since 1934, a lot of minority communities, a lot of Black and brown people were not able to truly benefit from this loan program until 1968, when the Civil Rights Movement, along with the Fair Housing Act, was first introduced into legislation. So what does that mean? Unfortunately, a lot of Black and brown communities are 30 years behind in the wealth gap when it comes to home ownership. But what I'm here to do, and so many others, is to help bridge that gap. All right. So now let's tackle some of the burning questions that you guys have sent in. I am ready to answer these. So the first question, are home inspections worth paying on for new builds? So this is what I would say. Just because it's a new construction doesn't mean that it does not have faults. And you can walk in with your naked, untrained eye and not see any issues. I always encourage a home inspection. I've actually had some reports to where, hey, there were some issues. That doesn't mean that the builder won't tackle them, because they will, but it's made by a human. Nothing's 100%. Definitely get the home inspection so that you're not walking into something after you purchase and now it's 100% your responsibility. All right, so second question. What is the best way to compete with cash buyers? You want the truth? Have cash. But what I will say is this. I went up against cash offers before with clients and I've won. Just because it's cash doesn't mean that it's strong. Because, I mean, a lot of people still think cash is king, but they also feel like with cash, they can lowball because, hey, it's cash. The things that are important when it comes to writing an offer is how quick can you close? What's important to the seller? Not all sellers want to close quickly. Some sellers may, hey, need to find another home. So they may need a little bit more time in their home. This ties back into making sure that your agent is knowledgeable. Your agent needs to know how to present your offer, and they need to know how to get important information so that you can write an effective offer, not competitive, effective, based off the seller's needs. So I appreciate you sticking it out with me today during this episode. And let's talk about some takeaways that'll help you out. Prepare your finances, know your credit score, understanding the pre-approval process. And go ahead and just get some documents ready. Those are bank statements, pay stubs, tax returns, or some of the basic ones that you'll need up front. Research the market and plan for your house hunting strategy. That goes back to making sure that the agent you hire is knowledgeable and will know how to put you in the winning position every time. And make informed offers and avoid common mistakes. So thank you for tuning in to Homegrown Wealth. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Once again, Jillian Coleman Realtor on Facebook, Jill Closes on Instagram and TikTok. See you again.